stay up all night doing the stinking project to get a C? Am I smarter than a fifth grader? No, I've figured it out. Well, do you know who won the neck decorating contest? It was frustrating. Nobody did. It was a tie. Do you know where rainbows go when they've been bad? Well, to Prism, so they can reflect. I tried to make a joke about a ghost. It was full of spirit, but it had absolutely no body. Come on, those are good. Man. Well, listen, we are starting a new series today called Family Therapy. I think we can all use a little of that sometimes. I think we can all just sit down, have a conversation, and figure out what's going on in our families. Because one of the things that I heard is that parenting is not an exact science. And a lot of times what we want is we want just, hey, give me exactly what I need to do. Tell me what needs to happen. Tell me how I need to parent. Tell me how I need to get to my kids. Tell me how I can have a better marriage. Tell me how I can keep my kids from making poor decisions. And to be honest with you, it's not an exact science. And we've got to be able to understand that. But part of the thing that helps is being able to talk about it. And so one parenting advice that I heard was, when the most expensive thing that'll ever happen to you in life is, one, when you get married, and two, when you have kids. Is that not the truth? Man, they suck the money right out of you. I don't know how that happens. But there is always something to where they're coming to you and they're like, Dad, I need $10. Dad, I need $20. And it is just those small hits that just, man, start making big dents, and it hurts. And so today what I want us to do is I want us to look at just really, how do we become a godly family? And how do you and I begin to raise godly kids in a world that's trying to do everything it can to get to your kids, to keep your kids from being who God has called and created them to be? And so I think it's just it's going to be a great time for us to just really reflect of what's going on. But I want you to understand, listen, parenting is difficult. It is. And I think we're in the hardest time to be a parent, but also to be a kid. I don't think there's ever been a time harder in our life. I don't think there's ever been a time more difficult in raising kids, in raising godly kids, than it is right now. I think there's some things that are making parents kind of check out of being parents, to where they just put screens in front of their kids and they don't parent anymore. They just throw screens in front of them to distract them. And we've got to be careful with that. And we've got to be careful in how we parent and what we do. But I remember when we get in the car, I don't know what it is about our family and getting in the car, but when we get in the car, Heather's got this little SUV, and now all the kids are getting bigger. When they were smaller, it wasn't a big deal, but now that they're getting bigger, their knees are hitting the seats in front of them. Nobody's comfortable anymore. Everybody's on top of everybody. And we get in the car and we go from being a good family that I feel like, is a good godly family, loves the Lord. And then we get in the car and it is knock down, drag out. Everybody hates everybody. Nobody wants to be next to each other. And I question whether or not we even love the Lord at that point. I'm like, what have we done wrong? Like, what is going on? Like, how did we get here? Like, we were just at dinner having a great time. Then we get in the car, and it's like the devil's workshop. And all of a sudden they change and they just jump down each other's throat and start fighting about everything. But a lot of times that's how it is parenting, isn't it? You have good days, you have bad days. You have great moments and then you have awful moments. You have moments where one time, a kid will walk in the house and it's like, hey, how are you? They go upstairs and then they come back downstairs and they became possessed when they were upstairs. And you don't know what happened and you don't know how it happened so fast. You're just like, what in the world? Like we were just laughing and having fun. I don't understand what happened. And for me to try to understand parenting, we are 18 years into this, 20 years into marriage. And I feel like we're still at ground zero. Like people are like, so how do I become a better parent? I'm like, I don't know. You tell me. Like, why are you asking me? Like, I need help. And so in this series, I'm really preaching to myself. I feel like I needed this, our family needed this. And so we're preaching this series so that we can begin to understand this. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4. That's where I want us to look. This is a prayer that the children of Israel would pray every morning and every night. And they prayed this: Hear, O Lord, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And he says, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. Isn't that incredible? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. And then he said this, and these words which I command you shall be on your heart. And he said, you shall teach them diligently to your children. You shall talk about them when you sit in the house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, when you rise up. Bind them as a sign on your hand, so that there shall be nothing, so that it will be between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. And so here's what it's saying. Teach your kids to love God with all their heart, with all their soul, and with all their strength. And it says put them diligently in front of them. Continually keep it in front of them. Talk about it when they sit down. Talk about it when you go on walks. Talk about it when you lie down. Talk about it where it's always on the forefront of your mind. Write them down. And so what he's trying to say right here is he's trying to show the importance of, if you and I want to begin to have a family that is Christ-centered, this is what it's going to take. What's it going to take for you and I to have a Christ-centered family? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. How do you do that? You talk about it all the time. You keep it right on the forefront of your mind. When you walk, talk about your relationship with the Lord. When you're putting them to bed, talk about your relationship with the Lord. When you get up, talk about your relationship with the Lord. When you're just sitting around the house, talk about your relationship with the Lord. See, I think there's two different things in Christianity today. I think there's something that you and I would call a Christian family. And that is really somebody who is a casual Christian. That's somebody who kind of labels themselves as somebody who follows Jesus. But yet their life may not match up with their words. See, they may claim to be a Christian family, but the problem is they're not a Christ-centered family. And that's what I want you and I to talk about today, is being a Christ-centered family. See, a Christian family is somebody who just has God as an option, and a Christ-centered family is one that God is the only option. And nothing else gets in front of him, nothing else gets in the way, nothing else takes priority. It is God. And so what I want us to begin to look at is that we have to become a Christ-centered family, not just a Christian family. Because if you hear it, there's a lot of times you can see it. When an athlete does something good, they come over and they begin to interview him. What does he do? I just want to thank God. But then here's the problem. You begin to look at his life and you watch his life, and nothing in his life matches up with that statement. How he talks, where he goes, how he lives, God's never a part of it until something good in his life happens, and then he's like, thank you, Lord. And I think that's where that Christian family thought begins to come from. We're Christian families. We live in Oklahoma. We live in the Bible Belt. We go to church. We're a Christian family. But my question is this, are we a Christ-centered family? Where Christ is at the center of everything that you and I do. And so I want to look at a couple things that I think happen when you and I begin to lose focus and we become a Christian family and not a Christ-centered family. And so what have we done wrong? And so what we're going to do is we're just going to take some time. We're going to lay on the couch for the therapist. We're going to just kind of confess some things, get honest with things, share how, it's my wife's fault, not mine, that I'm the great parent, but she's just too nice. I try to discipline, but she just is too kind. But we're just going to get on the couch and we're going to be honest. And so here's the first thought that I want us to think about. Think about this. Number one is we let our kids risk too little. We don't let them take risk. Think about life and growing up with you and I. Think about how we used to grow up. Remember when we would get up on Saturday mornings and we would leave the house and the only instructions were be back before dark, don't get in trouble. That's it. Where did you go? Wherever. What did you eat? Whatever you could find. What did you drink? Out of a hose. We didn't drink this bottled water. Now it's poison to drink out of a hose. We used to, turn on and just sit there and just drink that water. It was so good, and now all of a sudden it's like you're drinking out of a hose. That's poison. You're going to poison your kids. They're going to die drinking out of a hose. Are you kidding me? My dad used to have this, I don't even know what kind of car it was. It was this big brown boat. It was massive, just a big brown. Listen, we were not scared of getting in a wreck because it would destroy anything it hit. They were built different back in the day. You know what I mean? Like it hits something, it doesn't even get a dent. It just crushes it. It was massive, like 27 feet long. My favorite spot was in the back window. Yeah, you climb up there, lay in the back window, drive down the road. We never thought anything about it. When we would hop in the truck, we wouldn't get in the front, we would get in the bed. And we would ride everywhere in the bed of the truck. And then if we did jump in the front seat, we didn't need seat belts. We had the ultimate seat belt. Your mom's arm. There was just something, moms had unbelievable strength when it came to being able to save your life from a wreck. That thing would fly over there and hit you across the face so hard and hurt. And it's interesting when you begin to do research about where the airbag came from. It actually came from grandmas. Did you know that? They recognized that this you know what I'm talking about. Y'all just wave right now. You can feel it. You just wave right now. I apologize to all the grandmas. But listen, things were different. Now we protect our kids from everything, don't we? Now we don't let them do anything. Now we know where they're going at all times. We can pinpoint exactly where they are in the house. We can follow them on their phone and know exactly what's going on and what's happening. And the problem is when we put up too much protection, we don't give any room for growth. Because what's happening is we're beginning to make all the decisions for our kids. We lived on a big farm, 440 acres, and there was a creek that ran right in front of our house, and this thing went on for miles. And I would go down there and we would watch movies, and then we would dress up as the characters. And so I love Tarzan, so I would put little cloth in the front and the back, zip tie them, and then I'd take off and nobody was around, and I'd run around that whole thing being Tarzan, jumping in trees, swimming in the creek. There were multiple times that I think I drowned, but the Lord saved me. I don't know how. There were times where I'm swimming and all of a sudden snakes are swimming by me and I'm jumping out, and I'm sure it was a water moccasin. I didn't know any better, but I'm just swimming, having fun, and never thought anything of it. Now, kids come home, instead of on Saturday morning, hey, get out of the house, don't come back inside till it's dark. Now they get up, they play games all day. They get up, they're on their phones all day. There's no creativity, there's no risk. There's nothing that happens. Everything is lived in this little bubble in life. What if you and I needed to really begin to loosen the reins on our kids? And we needed to let them have some risk in life. We needed to let them have some freedom in life. We needed to let them make some mistakes. We needed to let them struggle a little bit. Because that brings me to thought number 2. Thought number 2 is this: we rescue too quickly. Come on, you know what I'm talking about. I was a grown man. Mom knows where I'm going with this story. I need to lay down for this. Tell me a story that has haunted you. Yes, sir. I was a grown man working as a youth pastor. Yes, a youth pastor. I was leading the group, had hundreds of kids in the student ministry. I had a coworker that was giving me a little problems. And so I did what every son does. I called mom and dad and just started talking to them and venting a little bit and just kind of sharing my heart. I just needed to get it out. Yes, I did have kids at this time. I was a grown man. And walk into the office the next day, get called into the pastor's office, and he says, "Johnny, I just got off the phone with your mom." What? I go, "What do you mean?" "Well, she called because I guess you're having some trouble at work." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, your mom called me." My mom called my boss. I'm a grown man providing for my family with children in the home, and my mom's like, "Somebody's being mean to my little boy." Like, son of a gun. So that didn't work out. But listen, maybe we get rescued too quickly. How many of you have your kids' coach's number on speed dial because they didn't get enough playing time? How many of you have the teachers? How many of you have stayed up all night long because your kid procrastinated and there's a project due the next day? And so instead of going tough, "You should have done this," we stay up all night doing the stinking project to get a C? Am I smarter than a fifth grader? No, I've figured it out. But we jump in very, very quickly and we begin to rescue our kids. We begin to save them. It's not fair. It's not right. My kids should make good grades. My kids should be playing. And what it does is it doesn't teach your kids to truly understand what failure is. Because listen, here's the thing. Failure's not a bad thing because failure's not final. Do you know we're raising a lot of kids that don't understand what failure is because we won't let them fail? It's not fun. But guess what? There's a lot of character that is built through failure that when you protect them from that failure, that character's never built. How many of you you step in? And so my kids have it terrible because my mom called my boss. So I'm like, there's not a chance I'm calling anybody. I don't care what they do. I'm not calling them. But I think what's happening is we're these helicopter parents that just think, I've got to keep everything from my kids. And I don't think that's how life was intended. That's not where character is built. Character's built in the struggle. Character's built in the hard times. Galatians 6:7 says this, do not be deceived. It says this, God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. Whatever you put into it, it's what you're gonna get out. If you just continue to protect your kids all the time, and you just helicopter parent them, and you don't let them struggle, you don't let them come in with bumps and bruises, you don't let them come in and get in trouble every now and then, you don't let them make dumb decisions every now and then here's what's gonna happen. They're not going to be able to understand and build the character necessary. And then when they go and they get a job, the problem's going to be that you're gonna try and pick up the phone. I saw this one thing where parents are trying to go to job interviews with their kids. Yeah, my son's getting a job. I'm just gonna come in and sit down with him. Tell him how good you are. Tell him how hard you work. He'd be perfect for this. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, if they would have walked out, I would have been like, yeah, no, don't even sit down. This is not going to work. You've got a mom like Johnny. Not happening. Listen, when you rob your kids of natural consequences, it takes away their fear of God. How do they begin to fear God when there is no natural consequences? Thought number 3. We model too weak. We're not good models for our kids. I don't mean runway models. I mean modeling who Christ has called us to be. One of the stories in scriptures in Luke chapter 15, it's the prodigal son. The interesting thing about the prodigal son is the prodigal son was disrespectful to his dad. He came, he demanded his inheritance, and he said, Dad, I want what's mine. It wasn't supposed to be given to him at that time. Actually, this was kind of like spitting in his father's face because his dad was still alive, but he's saying, I want what's supposed to be mine when you're dead because I don't care about our relationship anymore. I'm leaving. And so he takes off, he takes the money, he goes away and he finds this spot and he begins to spend the money. He begins to basically do drugs, sleep with everybody, party, try to find friends. He becomes the life of the party until all the money runs out. I mean, he was just this drug, alcoholic, sex addict that was taking place. And then the money runs out and all the friends go away. And the interesting thing about this story is the dad never went to rescue him. Isn't it interesting? As bad as the son was and as great as the struggle was, The dad never went to rescue him, but what it shows is this. The dad was eagerly anticipating the return of the son. He was praying for the son. He was hopeful that the son would turn from the decisions and the consequences that he had. Isn't it interesting? How many times do we see the mistakes of our kids and we try to jump in and pull them out rather than letting them experience some consequences so that then they turn from those decisions and they run from those decisions and they don't make those decisions anymore. It's interesting looking at this story and just seeing the father waited. He didn't go. That's hard as a parent. Can I tell you it's hard? It's hard as a parent waiting. Listen, your children don't become what you say. They become what they see. Let me say that again. Your children will not become what you say. They become what they see. One of the ways to drive your kids away from God is to say that you're a Christian, but not to model it. You want your kids not to follow Jesus? Then make all the Christian statements that you can, and then don't model it at all. Because kids follow what they see, not what they hear. Kids want to see somebody live it out. My kids don't want to hear me just stand up here and preach on Sunday and then go home and be nothing like what I've preached about all week long. They want me to model it. They don't care if I say it on stage. They care if I live it at home. Your kids care if you live it at home. Your kids care what you look like, what you say. Mark 7:6 says this. This people honors me with their lips. But he says this, but their hearts are far from me. They honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. And so now I want to look at this. What are some things that you and I can do better? And so these are things that we haven't done real well. Now let's lay on the couch and let's just say, okay, now here's some take-home things. Here's some things that you and I need to do better. Here's where you and I can improve as parents so that we're not a Christian family, but we're a Christ-centered family. Because I don't want just a title of Christian on my name that people just see and go, yeah, I'm a Christian. And then my life and my actions don't match that at all. I want everything that I do to flow through my relationship with the Lord. And so here's the thing. Who and what you expose your children to shape who they become and what they believe. Who and what you expose your children to shape who they become and what they believe. See, the music that they listen to, I think music today is so much different than it's ever been, and I think you and I as parents need to be very careful as to what we let our kids listen to. And so you need to know what your kids are listening to. And you need to approve what they're listening to. The friends that they hang out with. Listen, who their friends are and the backgrounds of those friends matter. Because how those kids are raised, what those kids' parents allow them to do, where they allow them to go, what they allow them to be involved with, all that matters because it's going to affect your kids. And so you need to be involved in that. The sexualization of kids. Listen, Heather and I are fixing to head to the beach here in just a little while. I remember a couple years when we went to the beach. I was sitting there with Heather, and a young teenage girl, walks by in front of us, and she is wearing a thong bikini. And I look at Heather, and I'm like, what in the world is wrong? Where's her dad? Like, I wasn't mad at her. I was like, where's her dad? I want to go punch him. This is ridiculous. Like, girls, we should not let our daughters, just because they see other people doing things, dress the way that everybody else dresses. There's this new thing out, OnlyFans. It's a pornography thing. it now makes more money than all of professional sports combined. Pornography. Let me tell you this. Your kids have access to it. Your kids know about it. And we wonder why they struggle. Because we've handed them this device and placed it in their hand and said, hey, here you go. Has access to everything that they could possibly ever think of. Anything they want is right there at their fingertips. And we're like, here you go, make wise decisions. Does that sound smart? You and I have got to become protectors. Not just parents, but protectors. Because the enemy is after your kids. He wants to kill, steal, and destroy them. And so here's the thing. We can't force our kids to love God. But we can expose them to the right people and the right experiences that increases the likelihood of their relationship with the Lord. I can't make my kids get saved, but I can put them around the right people and in the right place. Thought number one is this: expose them to the joy of knowing God. We want them to see us know God. It's my responsibility for them to see their relationship with the Lord. When I get up and I read my Bible, I want my kids to see that. And so my girls get up and they leave a little earlier, so I'm up, I go into their room, and I'm like, rise and shine and give God. And I'm like, rise and shine. This is God's day. But then I go downstairs, get a cup of coffee, open my Bible, and as they're walking out the door, they see me with my Bible in my hand, reading my Bible. My boys are still asleep because they don't have to get up for about another hour. And so when I take them to school, you know what we do? We get in the car and we listen to Scripture every single day on the way to school. Why? Because I'm teaching them what the priority in life is, that the first thing that you and I do is spend time with the Lord. We're the example to our kids. We have to expose our kids what it means to joyfully love the Lord and go after the Lord. It's fun serving God. It's fun loving God. It's fun having a good relationship with the Lord. And so I'm going to show that to my kids so that they understand and they know. John 17:3, and it says, and this is eternal life, that they may know you, the one true God, Jesus Christ, from whom you sent. I want them to know that. I want them to experience that, but I also want them to understand, I also have to understand that I am their example. I am the very first line of defense for my kids. And so if they're going to see something and they're going to be changed, it starts with me. It's not starting with Cody as their youth pastor. It's starting with you as their parents. You're their first example of what it needs to look like. And so, you're the first and the best exposure for your kids. And so here's some things I wrote down. Why do I read the Bible? Because I saw my mom and dad do it. Why do I read the Bible? Because I saw my mom and dad do it. Why do I trust God? Because I saw my mom and dad do it. Why do I obey God? Because I saw my mom and dad do it. Why do I worship? Because I saw my mom and dad do it. Why do I share the gospel? Because I saw my mom and dad do it. Why do I go to church? Because I saw my mom and dad do it. Why do I do these things? Not because they put a hammer over my head and just hammer. No, because I watched their example in front of me and I saw it work. So now that makes me want to do it. Mom, dad, be the example that your kids need. Thought number 2, expose them to the presence and the power of God. Psalms 92:13 says, those who are planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish in the courts of our God. And so we want to expose them to the power and the presence of God in the church. We want them to see what God does. What are things that are not optional in our house? Not brushing your teeth is not optional. That stinky breath does not fly in our house. Like, don't come around with stinky breath. Some of y'all need to go back home and brush your teeth today. Got that stinky breath. Not wearing deodorant. You ever get around somebody that just stinks? Walk through Walmart. You will run into them, I promise. I've run into them a lot. Walmart seems to attract people who just refuse to brush their teeth or wear deodorant. But listen, what else is not an option? Well, school, homework, work if you want a paycheck. Let me ask you this. Why is church not on that list? Why is church optional in your home? Why can we not be Christ-centered instead of a Christian family? Why can we not say church is the best thing for my family? Church is the best thing for my relationship with my wife. Church is the best thing for me as a husband and a father. Church is the best thing for my wife to be a mom and a mother and a wife. It's the best thing for my kids. But yet, why do we not prioritize it? If we're going to be a Christ-centered family, church is not an option, it is the priority. And so today, if you would you bow your head and close your eyes? And I want to ask you this question. Are you a Christ-centered family or a Christian family? Are you a Christ-centered family? Where God is at the center of everything we do. Nothing happens unless it moves through my relationship with the Lord as the parent. Or are we a Christian family? It's just a label we tie to it when it's convenient for us. Listen, I think God's stirring in families right now and trying to raise up Christ-centered families, not Christian families. I think God's doing a work and just saying, hey, we want to be all in on my relationship with the Lord. I want to know what it means to read my Bible, to pray over my kids, to love my kids the right way, to hold my kids to a high standard, to hold them accountable for what's right. Not just when they're in the home, when they're out of the home.